Welcome to day 39. Boy, has it been quite a fucking adventure. I'll say that. Where we last left our little heroes. So as I'm looking at this, as it's kind of coming together, I would say that we are going to be approaching the last big scene. The one I've been talking about, the one that I've been calling the ending climax that I didn't know about. Well, we're getting to that. And from that point, it's the beginning of the end. So 40 days into our writing adventure, we're almost done with the first draft of the book. How does it feel all together? Well, I really don't know. It's like a fucking blur. As I said last time, I've been trying to not focus so much on the book when I'm away from it. Where I used to in the past kind of let it consume me, and it was all I ever thought about, was the book. And it was very, very consuming. But this time, I'm just kind of, every time I'm doing a writing day, I do it for that day, and I think about it in that way. And then I will, once Thursday hits, I walk away from it, and we don't think about it too much, you know, which is good. It's good to constantly walk away, because there was a point where it consumed me so much that I didn't really know how to function outside of it. You know what I mean? I don't know how to explain that. It was so consuming that I don't even know who I was once I walked away, when I was involved in the book, and then I had to do something away from the book. I couldn't even function. It took me over fully. That I can't explain anymore. I don't know if it's just because that's how it is with certain kinds of art, or if there's something more to it. I don't know. I never really put much thought into it, but I do know that it was a difficult journey the past few years. But in saying all that, finding a way to balance life was my main goal, and now we've hit that goal. We just got to continuously do it. That's the point, you know. It's easy to get to a place. It's hard to consistently stay there with anything. You know what I mean? Like, it's not something that, I don't know, it's not like a video game where you hit a tier and it's like, and then you just hang out here and now you're here forever. Like, life goes up and it fluctuates and it comes down. One minute you're high, then you're low. One minute you're doing everything you can to be closer to your family, and all of a sudden you realize 5 months went by and you forgot to do it consistently, and now you're apart again. It's like that. And so the hard part is finding some sort of balance that will help you be a better person, or whatever you're trying to do. I don't know, like just function, honestly. I don't know, man. I just can't really. I'm so excited to finally sit down and like read everything I did in order and see what the story is. I'm kind of excited to explore that. I don't really know. Like, I generally know what the story is, but when you do that stream of consciousness, you don't remember all the elements, or you don't remember every single thing. Like, I was sitting down today, and I'm like, well, what did I write last? Because it was a week ago. Like, what the fuck did I write? I don't even remember. So to kind of like sit and think, like, what fucking happened last time we wrote? And I think sometimes there's a negative effect in that, where because you're doing it that way, the consistency might not be there, because the character just lived the event. The author did it a week ago, so he's got to kind of like, what did he do? You know, like, can you imagine living your life that way? There's a part of me that's like, should I work with that and kind of make it a thing where there's some sort of amnesia state? Or should I find the connections and like go to those sections and really make them better, transition them? And I probably will do the second. It's just, you know, because that's all the simple fix is. If you tend to write this one day and then you write this the next for the character, and you're like, oh geez, that's such a weird transition, but I like it. All you gotta do is fill in the gap. Just make him get to that point. It's not hard, it's just annoying if you do it a lot, if you constantly make mistakes like that, as I do. But the whole point of writing it this way is, you know, with stream of consciousness, is to invoke a story that's deep within your psyche. Like, how can you tell a story to yourself? And when in that telling of that story, how far can you go? What can you make happen? How vivid is your imagination? How easy is it for you to do this? Like, you're doing these tests, and you're kind of, you're creating this thing. You're making a process. You're bubbling something to the surface that does not exist, and you're bringing it into existence. All the while you're using the tools that you have within your mind, you know. So as a writer, you're using all the tools you've honed thus far in your writing. Or you're trying to, let me say it like, how would you say that? You're basically bringing forth a story from nothing through the imagination with the skills that you have thus far in your journey. And in some sense, it's like solving problems is what it really is. It's like you're solving issues. Because you're bringing something forward from nothingness, and because it comes from that imaginary state, well, it doesn't really have, generally, at least for me, it doesn't have some sort of consistency. It doesn't have these hard lines that keep it in its box. It's like just flying everywhere. And all you're trying to do is bottle it up and put it together and say, okay, here's something. This must be a story. Now that first imagination, that conjuring of the story is that part. That's where we're at. We're conjuring something from nothing. We're pulling from the ether or the imagination some sort of thing that happened, and we're putting it on paper. We're putting it to memory. From that point, we're just going to take it, and this will happen when we're done with the first write. Then we have to decipher it, and then from that deciphering, we have to hone it in. Put real life boundaries on it. You know, put time in there, put space in there, put memory and thought and all this kind of stuff. It's quite a lot, man. It really is. It's not something that has ever, for me at least, been easy. But you have to put, you know, once you pulled it from the imagination and it's floating around, you have to take that and put the human element into it. You have to put what we understand. There are certain parts in it that, for me, like, keep it dreamlike, keep it inconsistent, because it's okay, and that's supposed to invoke something. But then there's other parts where it needs more of a, like, realistic human understanding. Like, you know, things don't just fucking happen. You know, like, everything has its divine or sub-divine purposes that make everything go forward. Hold on. No. Everything has its purpose, and we're just trying to find it. It doesn't work, mama. I want to be your friend because I made mistakes. No, I know. Okay. So, golly, dude. 20 seconds of nothing. It's just, man, I can't help but feel it, man. It's crazy to me. It's so crazy. It really is. Like, just all this shit we're doing, you know? You have to understand, like, for me, writing is something I've been doing for, 10 plus years now. So it's not something I enjoyed as a kid. It's not a thing that I set about to do. Like, I always wanted to write. I always loved reading, and I wanted to make my own fantasy. Like, it never really was that. It didn't feel that way for me. Discovering this platform has opened up a huge door for me that even I start to question what the platform really is. You know, when I grew up, I hated reading. I hated the fact that we had to do it, and then for me, it was like a punishment. So I always looked at it negatively. But as I grew older, when I fell into this book in its origins, I never set about to be a writer. I don't even know how to explain what it was. It was just, what if we made our own place? And I did that, and all this stuff happened, as you can see through all these videos. Just watch them. But what's behind that was always escapism. And I knew this pretty early on, that what we're doing here is pure escapism. That's all it is. I'm just trying to walk away from stuff in my life that I don't feel like either handling, or it's too much to handle, or whatever it may be. Just general things that we tend to do. We have something to distract us. This distraction has led me to a lifelong journey where, in a sense, I feel like I might have been, like, I didn't become a writer because I wanted to. I became a writer because I had to. Like, what else am I going to do? And there's this kind of ego behind it. It's like, what makes you think that this fucking place you have made up needs to be heard, seen, and felt by other people? Why do you feel that way? And so there's some deep psychological shit going on there. And I don't necessarily always think it's anything good. It's always just like, like you're trying to force you to live inside the world that you're imagining. Or you're trying to show them things. You're trying to let them see certain things. You want to be understood, so you want them to read these characters. There's all that fucking bullshit from it. But then there's this other thing, too, that it feels like you're surfacing shit that you look at this world, and the world's out there before you, and it comes back to you, and it says, here's an object from the world, and it hands you something like this, and you're just like, oh. And you look at it and you say, well, this is interesting, but I guess I don't understand why we need this. What's the purpose of this thing? And so you start to question it, and you start really examining what you're looking at, and you're starting to see all these elements, and, well, there's a lot of people on them. Like, why do we need to represent people on this? What are we trying to say? Look at the way they look how they're dressed. What are they holding? And so you start to look at the world like that, and you turn it into this thing, this fantasy element. You take a spin on it, and you push it back out. And that's all you're really doing, is deciphering the world, filtering it, and putting it into the ether, if you want to call it that. I don't know. I call it imagination, I guess. And I saw that as the purpose, and then I started to really think about, what is fantasy? What exactly is fantasy? Just the genre. And I'm like, I don't know. There's something more to it. It's not just these people love it, and we sit down and we make up little fun worlds, and you get to read it, and it's enjoyable. It's great. Like, no, there's more to it than that. There's something that it puts into the world, something, some sort of literature that makes this, I don't know, some deep meaning to us that even we can't quite fathom. And I don't know exactly how to explain it better than that. It's just the literature of fantasy is saying something. And I wonder at times if it's on the same realm as the mythologies. When we look back in history, all that tends to survive is the mythology. Generally, right? So it's like, you want to go way back and know what happened during the great wars between the Trojans and I think the Greeks, or maybe they weren't called the Greeks at that time. Well, we don't really have a lot there, but what do you have? You have the Iliad and the Odyssey. You got to read between the lines. Like, okay, what truth happened here? Think of, like, let's go 1,000 years into the future, right? When they want to understand the construction of America, think of what mythology will be said about the Founding Fathers. How they've already been mythologized. And, like, the Tea Party, and then, them getting together and stopping against tyranny and all this fucking made up shit. And they were just here to want freedom for their people. And then think of, like, the figures of, like, later on of Abraham Lincoln and Roosevelt and Kennedy. It's like, they'll just be mythologized into these great heroes. We're not going to remember the story. We're not going to remember the real events that really happened. What truth was behind it. What human thoughts were really there when you witnessed all this shit happening in history. And so that's all that, fantasy is with mythology. It's just mythologizing some sort of history. And so when I tell you about the history of my book, I'm saying, well, there's a real life history out in the world that I'm taking and putting in the book. I'm putting my spin on it, And I'm in a sense mythologizing elements of history, whether that's groups of people, events, conflicts, land expansion, like countries forming, or, I don't know, crusades, genocides, whatever the fuck happened in history. I'm just taking it in real life, putting in this book, and then, it's the same fucking thing, but now it's hidden even deeper. It's not necessarily the surface level, easy to find, unless you know history. You'll read a section and be like, I know what you're doing here. So there's something about fantasy that does that, and I don't necessarily know more that I could say in that respect. But also, you have to think about when an event happens, all the minds that were there that witnessed it, everyone always has a different story. You ask me, there might be more traumatic involvement in the story. You ask someone else, they're just going to give you an objective thought and they don't really feel the trauma from it. We all have a different story to tell of the same event. And so that's where it all gets really tricky. And so all those thoughts right there make me think, well, I'm writing a fantasy, so what am I doing? With all that being said, what exactly am I doing? And I mean, as much as I can muse all this shit, as much as I could tell you everything I just said, if you sat me down and literally asked me the most simplest question, why are you doing this? I don't think I'd have an answer for you. And I find that has been the most consistent thing through this writing process, is I could sit and all day come up with solutions to problems. I could workshop ideas. I could sit down with concepts and say, how can I make this one work? I can fill plot holes. I can explain the character's reasoning. I can go through the whole story and find the whole story arc. I can explore every fucking element I possibly can. From the way the character thinks to what does that building look like. It's like I sit and I dwell and I come up with these reasons and I write page after page after page of this shit. But every fucking time, all of that being said, it's like, okay, the book's good. I figured out every fucking problem I could. But when I'm met with the most simplest question, why? I'm always like, I don't know. Does that make sense? It's like, we have a character here. His name is Nakum. I know exactly, because it took me a long time to figure it out. I figured out where he comes from, how old he is, what he looks like, what he likes to wear, his favorite foods. I figured out the story of his life, the traumas that happened to him, the friends that he met, the places that he went, the jobs that he had, all of the stuff. I kind of feel like I know this guy. I know how he talks, I know how he thinks, I know how he reacts to situations, I know what he hates, and I know what he loves. But then you say, well, the why, okay, so the question would be, you know all that stuff. Yeah, I know exactly who he is. Okay. Why is he doing what he's doing right now? And I'm always just like, I don't know. I have no idea why he's doing what he's doing. But you said you understand him. Why is he doing what he's doing? And I'm just like, I don't know. So I'll sit down and write stuff to try to figure out, well, why is he doing this? Maybe this, maybe that, maybe this. This reminds him of his childhood. And in his childhood, he felt this way. So maybe he doesn't want this to happen. So that's what he's doing. And that's why he went with this person. And that's also why they ended up getting caught up in this situation. And I'm like, got it. I figured out why. And then I'd sit down again and I'd say, right. But why is he doing this specifically? And I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily a fucking me problem. And it might be. It might just be my life feels pointless. Or I may feel like I don't have a purpose. I'm just scrambling day to day, just trying to figure out that day, trying to figure out who I am and why I am. But if you ask me, hey, me, what is the story of your fucking life? What are you trying to achieve? Finishing these books is all I could ever say. I don't have any other goals. I don't have any other ambitions. So that could be part of the problem why I can't come up with that why. Because, okay, your life ambition is writing these books. Why? Jesus, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm just doing it because it was presented before me, it feels like, and now I have to. Why do I do this every day? No fucking idea. Man. It fucking gets me. And so sometimes I'll sit down and I'll try to write, and I just say, like, why are we doing this every day? Why do we keep doing this? What is going on here? What are we trying to say? It's an active fucking part of the journey that I keep participating in, and I don't have answers for the simplest things. And I guess in my mind, well, shit, that's jarring as hell, because it's like, you can't answer this question? That's kind of strange. Maybe you shouldn't keep doing this if you don't know why you're doing it. Maybe you're doing it because it's an addiction. Maybe you're doing it because you're trying to hide. Maybe you're doing it because, my mind will go negative before it'll go positive. It'll just be like, well, you're probably just a failure. That's why. Sometimes why is the hardest question to ask, and it's even harder to answer. But I do know one thing. But I find that most people don't even know how to ask why, or never even really have. So in some sense, there's a little bit of solace that maybe I'm doing something more, but I just can't see what it is quite yet. Melancholy child. Yeah, maybe there's something to it. I don't know. We're going to hopefully find out. That's the point of this fucking series. We're trying to go into the mind of me. Well, here we go. That's something that I'll always... It's always back there. It's just hanging out. Like, why are you doing this? Why is this happening? What's the point of all this? I don't know. But anyway, busy day. We'll have to get to it. And on to the next day of